Hi, everybody. Welcome to episode 2 of Ordinary People. This episode is entitled The Good versus the Bad, and I am your lovely, spectacular, unique, but ordinary host, Sabrina. So, welcome. Um, that was a little conceited, but I'm going to let that go. Basically, I want to just make one thing very clear about episode 1. I recorded episode 1, I watched episode 1, I edited episode 1, and I realized I have so much room for growth. And that is such an exciting thing to recognize. It's only going to get better. And I definitely have some notes. I did a little bit more writing and reflecting than I had for the premiere of episode 1. And so um, I really wanted to focus this episode on weighing the good versus the bad. Bye, baby boy. Nova just left. As you can see, if you're watching the video, I have Charlie next to me, and she should, for the most part, stay next to me the whole time. He's a wild card. He might just go and lay on the other side of the room, or he might come up here with me. Who knows? But that's a cat for you. He can be nice but sweet. Good but bad. Ooh, that was a good segue right there. But yeah, so a big thing about me is I know that when I'm passionate about something, I will put my whole heart into it and give my 100% effort. And in that, you have to realize, though, that 100% effort that you're putting into something, you're also going to be putting that same effort into something else. And you have to learn that balance of what needs your effort at that time, because I'm a big believer that I don't want to do something half donkeyed. I kind of like that. Instead of me having to blur anything out, I'll just make myself a clean version. But being half donkey, like, you have to realize, though, sometimes in that moment you are giving all that you possibly know. So in editing and doing recordings, like, I already feel more confident and comfortable recording because I did it the first time. And to not share that first time experience, I feel like is cutting off the ability for someone else to be able to understand that they can do it too, and that it just takes a little bit of courage and then a continued effort to be growing, and that you will really achieve the things that you are looking to achieve in life. And just keep your head down, but keep your head up in a way, but like keep your head down focus wise, but keep your head up motivation and positivity wise. So, got to balance the good and the bad. So, something when you continue to perfect your craft and practice it, you're able to, in a sense, put more effort into it because now you're capable of completing more because you understand and have more knowledge. But when you look back at what you've done and in the past compared to what you are currently doing and in the future, then you could say that they are two very different amounts of effort at first glance. But when you really understand deeper down that one of those is the reason that the other can flourish, then the effort has to be reflected on in the moment, not based on the experience, whether past or future. And we have to be able to learn from our past mistakes, grow and heal from them, and then move on. Just like that escalator from episode 1, we keep moving forward. A strong foundation in mechanics, aka our mind, will allow us to carry ourselves through the path. There have been moments when I really considered our purpose. What were we meant for? What were we meant for? My accent came out there. What were we meant for? Darn. Dang nabbit. You flipping rabbit. Now I got Charlie in my face. She knows I just messed that up. But back to our purpose. I really had a lot of moments to question of like, what were we meant for? And why are we here? And these types of questions would eat away at me. And I have found some peace in the thought of peace. Being here to enjoy the balance, to enjoy more than just the median, with it still ultimately being average. The good versus evil, heaven versus HE hockey sticks, whatever you want to call it, Adam versus Eve, male versus female, that type of scenario has been around for ever. And you might have a nice interaction holding the door open for someone as you walk into your car, right? So picture that. You're holding the door open and you're about to walk to your car and like, oh, I did a good deed. And then you begin to drive off and you get cut off and flipped off by some guy in a monster truck. And on a side note, I consider all trucks to be monster trucks, but that's just my opinion. But back to the scenario, there's this immediate balance of the two sides of the coin in terms of emotions, happy versus sad. Now, remember back to episode 1 where there's no black and white. The world is just full of gray, or you could say rainbow because that's a little bit nicer, but I think gray is just the expression. But I kind of like rainbow more, so we'll go with that. Everything balances out to this center line though. And it could be a world where there was no emotion, no thought, no differences, but what fun would that be? We get to experience some of the best highs and some of the worst lows. Each have equal importance for building the foundation to who we already are so that we can live prosper, prosperously. I like that word. I wanted to use it. I just sometimes can't speak English. I just mess up the word, so it's fine. When you move to other places that have like such like distinct accents and then you trying to like code switch and like go back into it, sometimes you lose your voice and how you sound. No, please lay down. Come here. Please lay down. Or you can sit. Oh, that's a good one. All right, you're gonna go lay over there. We're gonna give her a moment to adjust. She's just gonna sit there like a weirdo. All right. This is so not comfortable. I'm actually gonna restart and just do my introduction again. Well, no, maybe I won't. Actually, I'm just gonna keep going. You know what? You're gonna have to deal with it. That first section might have been bad, but hopefully the second section might be better. All right, I was on that word, prosperously. I have notes, remember. I said this time I was a little more diligent in what I wanted to get across and recognizing that I can have more of a checkpoint B and information overload communication style. It is helpful to have my writing from my brain down on paper, and I feel like it's a little bit more coherent. So you let me know your thoughts, what you prefer better. Just randomness. And it's definitely different. Like if you're interviewing someone for this episode, I'm interviewing my stuffed animals and Charlie and maybe Nova if he wants to come and hang out with us, but he's on the other side right now. But yeah, I feel like when you're trying to talk to yourself and do this type of video, it can be very difficult, but sometimes challenges are worth pursuing because you know that it's not going to be like this forever. Like, am I going to continue doing solo podcasts? Probably not. I might have a few segments where it's like, oh, throwback to, me and burping. I love burping. It makes me feel a lot better. I feel like it kind of like settles your insides and everything. But yeah. So basically, who knows? But at the end of the day, I see bigger things for this channel more than just me sitting and reading. And so if it means for me to be able to communicate my thoughts better, to write them down and take that time to have that creative moment and then be able to transfer that into verbal communication, whether I'm reading off a piece of paper or whether I just take the notes and then know how to speak like I am right now. But going back to my notes, prosperously. Remember, also, I have not always been this way. This is definitely a reset in terms of my mindset that I have worked for a really long time on and found a lot of resources and help in being able to better understand our purpose and why we're here and what we're meant for. And Charlie's blocking my screen right now and it's killing me. We're going to let her lay down. Lay down. There you go. Oh, she huffed and puffed. All right. But as far as like me, speaking these things, it's something that I've had to learn and I've had to really self-reflect and grow in myself to be able to communicate the way I want my brain to function and I want my brain to work. And the more you work it into your day-to-day life and that consistency and moderating bad influences and moderating good influences too, because you have to have a balance of the two. And just recognize I used to be on the opposite side of that, and I used to always wonder like, why is there all this bad and why can't things just be good? But literally, if everything was good, then everything would just be average. And you have to weigh the options. Like, would you rather live a boring life with no choices, no feelings of significance or purpose? Or would you rather live understanding that every moment is a part of our overall journey? and our overall unique journey, because we all have different journeys. Even though there may be similarities, they are unique to who we are. And that's the fun part about life. So reflect on that. And when you look at your journey, wouldn't you rather be able to see the good from the bad, rather than having the good get swept under the rug by victimizing yourself through the bad and making excuses? So I'm going to break down the mindset a little bit deeper with a personal scenario that happened a few years ago for me. And this was, I've definitely had some traumatic moments in life, but this was one of those where it really broke me. It broke me on so many different levels, in the direct physical sense, but also the worst one was the mental at the time. But as I've now, time has passed from that incident and that moment, I really realized why that had to happen in my journey for me to be able to open my eyes and my life to a different path and be able to explore a new adventure in a different way that I wasn't thinking was going to be that way. So you find some peace with it, but it definitely, you'll be able to tell it's still traumatic. It's still something that's happened, and it's okay to admit it. And hopefully, in me sharing this, someone else will be like, "Oh my gosh, like I've had that happen," or something similar, where you beat yourself down so bad, you feel so worthless that nothing else matters. And that is so beyond the opposite of what it really is. It's just a challenge. And when you start to look at it as a challenge and you're competitive and you say, okay, I can get through this challenge, it makes that trauma a little bit easier. And it's still there, it's still present, but we have to work on ways to not have it nag at us or bother us or make us worry and cause us undue stress that is just not necessary in life, because we all deserve to live a happy, peaceful life. And it takes a lot of work to get to that point. So, hopefully, through this journey, you'll be able to discover some things about yourself. And I know I am definitely discovering some things about myself. Like that first episode, I was blinking so much because I think I was so scared. And that's why I said I was going to write instead and then read from it. And then when I feel like I want to go off on a little bit of a tangent from what I wrote, I will. And I don't feel like I'm blinking as much, but I could watch this video and be completely wrong. But we're going to hope that my blinking was not like, for those of you not on the camera, I just blinked my eyes like crazy, like a little. But yeah, so basically breaking down the mindset of weighing that good versus bad and recognizing when you are in that bad that the good is right around the corner, and you just have to remind yourself for that and look for it. That's the most important thing, is to look for the good, because then you are going to find it. If you look for the bad, you naturally are going to find it. They're both present in our everyday life, whether it be holding the door open for somebody or getting flipped off by a monster truck. So just got to remind yourself of that. So, long story short, but it's not really that short, but I'll try to make it short. I moved when the world turned upside down. And there was a lot of reasons, but all the way to the other side of the country I went. I purchased my first home, got my first animal, and got situated with someone I thought I was going to spend the rest of my life with. I thought everything was going to be perfect, and I was ready to settle for mediocrity, even though now looking back on it, I deserve a lot more. And other people deserve a lot more from me. So I'm not trying to place any blame or anything like that. It's just an understanding that these things happen so that we can learn, grow, and be better in the future. And reminding ourselves of that. It's okay to fail. Um, but I definitely had quite a transition, because I was expecting to go back to my everyday to day life and, what I used to do at my old job. I was relocating and all that. And just like the world got turned upside down, my personal world got turned upside down. So it was Thanksgiving, and I was driving in the car. We were visiting some family. And basically, while I'm driving, I see this punch buggy. And to give this a little bit of pretext, I am very competitive. Like, for the simplest, smallest, silliest things, I am so competitive. And punch buggy is one of those. Like, it was just something I did as a kid, and it always made me happy. It always kept me vigilant on the road, like looking for a punch buggy rather than being on my phone or doing those things. And I get car sickness, so I could never like read while in the car, and sometimes I couldn't even eat while in the car. Like if we're going around bins, like ooh, it was bad. But as I got older, that kind of cleared up some. But I have moments where I definitely cannot read while I'm driving, or well, not while I'm driving, while I'm in a car. If you were trying to read while you're driving, unless you have a Tesla, and I don't even know how that really works, because I know it like monitors your eyes and stuff like that. I believe. I'm not quite sure, so don't hold me to it, Elon Musk. But yeah. Okay, so we get it. I am very competitive. I don't want to keep going on that point. So back to the story. I see this punch buggy and I'm super excited. And I go to swing on my mom. I get her easily because she's just in the passenger seat. And so, we're laughing. Then I'm like, oh, I'm going to get my boyfriend at the time in the back seat. So I start swinging my arm backwards like a crazy woman, like one hand driving, one hand swinging. But when this happened, I felt like everything went black. And it was just a moment. Everything was fine, happy, positive, and then all of a sudden, this shooting pain. And I felt like my arm was like, I couldn't move my arm. And I never felt a pain like this before in my life. And so I'm like screaming, I'm crying, like on cue. The second it happened, the waterworks started, and it was bad. It was still to this day the worst pain I've ever encountered. And to have that happen at such a young age, I can't remember. I think I was 22. I might have been, yeah, I was 22 because I was about to turn 23. I think. I don't even know anymore. It happened 3 years ago. I'm 25. Yeah, I was 22. But so basically, I ended up like braking. My mom was able to get the car to the side of the road. And thank goodness, like we were kind of out in the boonies. There wasn't many cars driving by aside from that freaking punch buggy, but we'll let that go. Um, but yeah, so we pull off to the side of the road, and I really didn't want to get an ambulance. We were, one, about like 10 minutes from the hospital, and two, maybe that's another story time that I'll give for you guys, but I don't want to go in ambulances. As if I can avoid it, I'm going to try to avoid it. So yeah, I did not want to have any of that. So it took them quite some time to get me out of the car and into the back seat. And I remember feeling like every single rock, every single pebble, or minor surface crack in the road was like an earthquake, and I'm like shaking and everything is just hurting, and it's just this nonstop pain, and it was like a hot pain, like it was radiating around my shoulder area. And just, again, I've never felt anything like that. So you know it was a challenge, definitely. And so we finally get to the hospital, and we go into the ER, and like we let them know what's happening. Like I'm crying like a maniac at this point, and I'm sweating profusely because they tell us to sit down and wait because they have patients that have runny noses that need to get checked before us. And I ended up waiting for 2 hours while my mom patted me down with like a cold washcloth. And I remember feeling miserable, and like I had this big spotlight on me, but I was Quasimodo. And in feeling that way, I just was so upset and angry at myself because I couldn't control my emotions. I couldn't control the pain that my body was feeling. And I just didn't know what was happening at that point. And so, long story short, wait the 2 hours. I don't know about you, but I have never heard of like a first come, first serve basis in ERs. Like, I didn't see that in the triage in Grey's Anatomy, but I could be wrong. Basically, they take me back into the room finally, and I'm feeling, in that moment when my mom was like patting me down with the cold rags and stuff, I just wanted her to stop so bad. And I had to ask her to stop at one point because it was just drawing attention. Like, if I could have paid to have an invisibility cloak, I would have paid anything to have that in that moment. And when I say anything, I mean millions. If you know where that's from, that's funny. If you don't, that just sounds weird. But hopefully you guys know. If you know, you know. Um, but yeah, so finally they took me back, and it was just a whole ordeal. They gave me medicine. I'm finally not feeling in as much pain as I was. And I'm like, oh my gosh, okay, I can relax. Like, this sharp, hot, burning sensation is no longer hot, burning sensation. Because the best way I described like feeling was like I was the guy from Jurassic Park. Like, I felt like my arm got ripped completely out of my socket. And I had never felt anything compared to what I would imagine that feels like. And so that's what I'm going to compare it to. I was the guy from Jurassic Park, and I know there was a lot of guys from Jurassic Park. There's one I'm thinking in particular, so maybe we're thinking of the same one, like the one where they had the truck and then the guy like got ripped in half or something. But that was his whole body, and I only felt this in my arm, so maybe I was like 1/4 of this guy from Jurassic Park. But still, it was definitely painful. So basically, they give me the medicine. I calm down. They take some X-rays, and they tell me they'll be back in 45 minutes. And so, about 40 minutes into waiting for them to come back, I moved ever so slightly, like, and I'm probably like leaning right now because I'm trying to like lean into the microphone. So hopefully the video looks okay, because that was one critique I had for my own last video. I was like, oh, I can do better with recording, and I felt like the sound was okay, but the recording could have been better. And being able to gauge and please my audience, but also please myself in the work that I am producing and putting out. And so basically, I move a little bit and I feel this like, and my arm goes back into place. It still hurt. I could still feel the pain, but I definitely knew that my arm had slid back into socket. And so 5 minutes later, the doctor and then his like intern or apprentice, they call them interns. I don't know where I was getting apprentice from, but they come in and I'm going to be the guinea pig for this guy to reset a shoulder. And yeah, my body, I guess, had like some forewarning. It was like, nope, you're popping yourself back in. It was like, nope. I guess my body had some forewarning. It was like, nope, you're popping yourself back in. You are not going to be a guinea pig today. And so it was so weird because they come like barging in the room. They're all ready to like, pop my shoulder and they're all excited. And I'm like, how are you excited? But I also kind of get it like, you know, this is that guy's first time doing it. And unfortunately, I had to strip that away from him and tell them I think it went back in. And they proceeded to, sorry, I felt another burp coming, but they proceeded to demonstrate on each other how they were going to relocate the shoulder and like what they would have done. And then they're like, okay, we'll get you more x-rays just to confirm that it's back in. And it was just such a weird endeavor. Like the whole incident was just weird all around, but that's fine. And so finally they take the x-rays, and seeing like the visual of the x-ray and realizing that the bone, so you have like your socket and then you have the bone inside the socket. And my bone was completely in my armpit. That's how low it had dropped, because it went down and outwards. And that was how they explained it. And in having it go down and outwards, it also ripped off 2/3 of my muscle from the bone. So I would say I'm within qualifications to say I was the guy from Jurassic Park. It felt like that. I might not have had a T-Rex doing it. It might have just been the weight of my arm doing it, but it still hurt like a beep, 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 beep. I didn't feel like adding an edit, so I just beeped instead. But so yeah, basically get put in a sling, get surgery scheduled a month later, and it was really humiliating. That whole time in the sling, your arm is so weak. It's, your muscles are naturally going, your body's going to try to heal itself. But when you have such a severe incident or damage take place in your body, it takes a long time for it to heal. And from what I've heard, the older you are, the harder it is to heal. And so I was really lucky. I was, 22, and at a point where a month later, after I had to deal with, I mean, it was horrible, the showers and everything, but a month later, I go in for surgery. And they prep me. They say, oh, if, most people get like 1 or 2 anchors put in their arm, you're going to have 3. And I was like, okay, do whatever you have to do. And then they were telling me about, the anesthesia and the nerve block. And I had never been under anesthesia before, so I was already really scared. Like, I did my wisdom teeth fully awake. I had to smell like my burning teeth. It was disgusting. I really would not suggest it. But it was just something where, okay, clearly for this, I do have to I have to be under anesthesia. And then this nerve block. So I was kind of in my negotiation stage, and I was trying to see if I could wiggle out of getting the nerve block. And then they told me that if I did not get the nerve block, and then they told me that if I did not get the nerve block, I was going to feel the way, I was going to wake up feeling the way I did when the accident happened. And the negotiation was over at that point. He won. I got the nerve block. There was no question. Once they said that, I said, okay, fine, do what you have to do. But I was really scared because there was this fear of paralysis from having a nerve block. And you have to imagine your brain sends neurons down to, your nerves to perform actions. And when you have something like a nerve block, it is completely cutting off the nerves and neurons' ability to complete their job. And so it's something that is definitely a very weird experience to have basically your body turned off at one section. Like one section of your body just is turned off. And I've never had that before. And so definitely was nerve wracking, but went through surgery, woke up, I had ice cubes and ginger ale on deck. And so I was excited about that. And I was feeling a little groggy, and it was weird. I think I might have scared the anesthesiologist a little bit because I was so nervous about the nerve block. So I don't think he actually went fully into it. But it was so weird because my hand was like stiff, like Frankenstein stiff. It was like I had a dead person's arm put on my arm. My arm had hit rigor mortis basically. It was the weirdest thing. I could bend my fingers inwards towards my body and let go, and they would spring out. And I wasn't even in control of it. My body was just doing that. It wanted to stay in this like stiff position. And so it was just a really, again, weird experience. And I was seeing all these negatives because, that 1 month before I had surgery and then all the time afterwards. Oh, and on top of that, too, I didn't end up with 3 anchors. I ended up with 5 anchors. And that is a lot. But they said that somehow in that month time frame, my body was trying to heal itself. And so it reattached the muscle, but it was on like the wrong portion of the bone. I don't really know all the mechanics behind it, but it was so bad that they ended up having to cut off muscle and then needed more anchors to go in. But it's also amazing when you look at the advancements in technology, because 10 years ago, I would have had a scar from my shoulder all the way down to maybe even my elbow. Like that, it was a huge, or just how large the scars used to be. But now they're able to do everything through a camera. So I have 2 little tiny scars in the front of my shoulder and then one exit scar, which is kind of like 3D. The other two are like indented scars, and so they're really light, and the other one's kind of like a thicker scar because that's where the camera had to exit out from, I guess. But all in all, it's just amazing to realize that I had this bad thing happen, but if it would have happened sooner in life, it could have been a lot more traumatizing body image wise, rather than having it happen when it happened and I'm left with 2 little tiny marks. And they're kind of cute. I've grown to love them and recognize that I'm a warrior, and I had a really challenging thing happen and I persevered through it, and I can now do things with both my arms. And yeah, and there's, in my day to day, that's where that focus on making sure I take care of my body and making sure that I'm exercising and keeping my muscles strong so that the chance of this happening again is slim to none, because I really don't want to go through this again. It was really challenging, and that's where I was getting at with that month before I had the surgery and then the months afterwards going through physical therapy and having to wake up, well, really right when I got out of surgery, I had to wake up every 2 hours, and I had to do this like weird pendulum swing. And so imagine you're standing up, right? And then you bend your body down to like a 90-degree angle and you're letting your arm dangle. Now, because you have the nerve block, you can't feel your arm, so it's as stiff as a board. So it's literally just erect in the air, dangling there. And so you have to do, and I called them whirly durlies, but I'm pretty sure that they're called pendulums because you're literally creating your body to be a pendulum to make your arm swing, because you don't want your body to get stiff. And so you have to, even though you can't feel it, you have to get that arm to move. You have to get yourself to move. And that's something in life too. We have to realize when we put a nerve block on our mind, we have to push forward in order to get that block away and really be able to enjoy life. And so doing these pendulum things, you have to like swing your hips around in a circle so that your arm is like moving. And it was the most awkward thing, but I had to do it every 2 hours. And I remember them telling me the nerve block would last for about 24 hours. And so every single time that I had to wake up, I would check and I would try to like in my head tell my finger, my pointer finger, I was like, move your finger, move your finger. And at first, I could feel it stop. Like the signal just stopped at my shoulder. And then a few hours went by, a few more pendulums, and then I felt it in my bicep. And then it moved to my elbow and down to my wrist. And then finally, my finger, like, it twitched. It wasn't even like a full, like, move your finger. It just twitched. It was like, hey, I got one nerve in here, or a neuron. It was like, hey, I got one neuron through. Like, hey, you see me twitch right there? Aren't I cute? And I was like, oh, and I was so excited because that was my warning sign that I was going to be okay. Not warning sign. That was my sign that I was going to be okay. And reminding myself that this was a really traumatic experience and I'm going to get through it. And I wish I would have been a little bit, oh, I don't even like to say I wish. Take that part out, Sabrina. But through that, I was just super excited that I wasn't paralyzed and that I was going to have function in my arm, but it was going to be an uphill journey. And so I remember all of those times that I had to take a shower. And this is part of the reason why sometimes I think I have issues with showering. And I think sometimes it's the reason why I appreciate a good shower, because I can do it on my own now. And at the time, I used to have to hold up my arm and I would get bathed down because I didn't have enough strength to hold my arm up itself. So I'd have to hold it. Basically, my other arm was the sling while I got bathed down. And I was just humiliating. I felt like I was a century old woman. Century old. I could have just said 100-year old, but I feel like century old sounded better. Um, but to be 22 and feel like you're 5 times your age, just, it didn't make sense in my brain. And it was really upsetting. And I felt reliant on other people to take care of me physically. And then it ended up growing into this mental care where I felt like I needed to get my spirits uplifted and I needed to rely on other people to do that rather than focusing on the things that made me genuinely happy and what I could do and change in my life to be able to achieve that. And so, oh my gosh, I don't know if this is recording. I don't see it blinking. I'm going to be really upset if this isn't recording. Hold on. Oh my gosh, it's so frustrating. It was not recording. It just deleted it. And I don't know where I was, so. It's hitting my vape just now. That's one thing I've been trying to stop really hard, like nicotine. But I feel like every time I try to stop, some other big stressor comes about, and then I get so moody. So I've been working with my doctor on some ways to be able to quit it and not be like psychotic when I quit it because I'm really not like a crazy person. Well, that's up for debate. But in my mind, I'm really not like a crazy emotional person. Emotional, I'm not. Well, even that's up for debate. We all kind of are emotional at times. So I don't know what I'm trying to say. Basically, I've read some things where quitting nicotine is harder than quitting heroin, and that is terrifying. Like, I've never done heroin, and I don't know if there's anybody that like can compare to that, but it's just this crazy addiction. I started when I was in college actually because I figured I was weighing my options. I was like, it's better if I do this rather than like taking Adderall and drugs to stay awake because I was working 2 jobs and going to school 21 credits like full time for like ever, and I just had no time, and I was so tired all the time. And so that was what I would do to stay awake. I would be like, okay, I got to get through this chapter. Once I finish this chapter, I'll take a hit, and then that hit build to, oh, let me read this paragraph, oh, let me read this sentence, and then you just become dependent on it. And so the same way I was dependent on nicotine, I was dependent on other people, and I was dependent on my circle. And not that you shouldn't be able to depend on your people, but you shouldn't rely on them to make you happy. You have to make yourself happy. And that's one of the lessons that I really learned from all of this. Who the fuck is calling me right now? All right, back to it, everybody. So I have no idea where we ended off. Oh, I'm getting another phone call. This is killing me right now. Oh, her like elbow is like directly into my knee. Okay, so I've had some technical difficulties while recording this as my camera decided to turn off. So that doesn't necessarily affect the audio aspect, unless this isn't recording. Oh, this is recording. But it doesn't affect the audio aspect as much. It's more the like visual because I want to be able to provide like how people learn different ways. Um, some people are visual learners, some people are auditory learners, and so just being able to adapt to how the audience may want to listen to me. But yeah, so I had some technical difficulties with the camera. Then I got a call from my mom, and then I got a call from my roommate, and like just confirming I'm going to pick them up from work. And it's snowing right now, so I'm not too excited about that. But I'm a champ. I know how to drive, so I'll be okay. Maybe drift a little bit here and there. Just kidding. I'm like a grandma driver. Like I'm so slow, but I'd rather just be safe than sorry. And you shouldn't be in a rush. Like even right now, I know it normally takes me like 20 minutes to get there, but I'm going to leave with 40 minutes because I'd rather wait and be early than one, have them wait, and then two, try to rush to get somewhere when you don't need to. So, um, basically, long story short, I was talking about the weighing the good and bad in life and recognizing that sometimes when you're having those bad moments that the good is just around the corner and reminding yourself that it's okay to feel the emotions in the moment, but in order to kind of pull yourself where you're not continuing to pity yourself or continuing to have these emotions reoccur, it's really important to look for what the good is, because when you start to look for the good, you'll be able to find it easier. And if you look for the bad, unfortunately, the same goes. So I'm going to check my notes really quick. My iPad is about to die. So, and, I was saying in the first part of like this, I was kind of beating myself up of the awkwardness that I had in recording my first video, and one, the visual aspect of like my eyes blinking, and then two, the part of how frequent I was using filler words like and but and so, all those things to kind of get to the next thought rather than finishing my thought, taking a second to pause, and then going into the next thought. And some filler words are necessary in communication, but even like using it like but, that's a pause. It's a way for me to pause rather than just taking a moment to pause actually and then continue speaking. So I did write some things that I wanted to talk about after that shoulder incident. And, just the humiliation that I felt for myself through that was bad in of itself. Was bad in of itself. Yeah. But, afterwards I'm thinking, okay, I'm going to go back to what I knew, and that was restaurant business. It was my first job, and for those wondering what my first job was, I will say it made a very popular Vine, and so it's understood, it definitely was my life. It was my life. But yeah, I loved it, and I loved the structure of it, and there's definitely some donkey holes in there, and that's just a part of anything. You're gonna have to weigh the good and the bad, but overall, it was a really wonderful job, and I loved the atmosphere. I loved the standards. I loved what values they stood for, and I felt like it aligned with my own, and so I wanted to be a part of it, and I wanted to continue being a part of it. And so when I moved, I planned on relocating. Then my shoulder happened, so clearly it was a few months, well, definitely more than just a few months, but it was quite some time before I thought I was ready to go back into what I knew. And in trying to go back into it, this one I will make a long story short. I quit, but then was also fired on the same day. So, yeah, I was not fast enough making chips. There was also some other things too, but the main thing was I was not fast anymore because of my shoulder. And I felt ostracized. Like, I was expected to be able to go back to what I knew. And that's where balancing that effort, I was giving my full effort, but it wasn't what I used to be able to give in effort wise. I physically wasn't capable of putting out that same effort because of what had happened to me in the past. And yes, I wanted to get back to that, but I just had to accept that I wasn't there. And I probably needed a few more months of like really focusing more on physical therapy and not just getting cleared and then trying to jump back into a job. But I needed to make money, and I needed to figure out something else. And it was what I was comfortable with and what I knew. But then once that opportunity had up and left the nest and flown far, far, far away, I decided that I was going to deliver food, because I was like, I've been living in this area. I don't know where anything is. I might as well deliver food, and I get paid basically to explore. And so that was what I did for a while. Ended up like meeting this woman, and at first I thought I was going to get kidnapped. Like, I was like, why did I just give my phone number to some random person? But I'm proud of myself because I pursued it, and I wanted to see, what is this about? What is it going to be? And it's something I do completely separate from this, but it's just a super inspiring thing, and I love it. And so Charlie just took off. But yeah, I love it. And so if you ever have the opportunity where someone presents you with something, just take a second to look at it. It doesn't hurt to, ask questions and really understand what opportunity was presented to you. And it doesn't have to be for everyone, and that's okay. But if it's meant for you, it's meant for you. And it was meant for me. And that's where I had to find the peace in what happened to me and how bad and how traumatic of a situation my shoulder injury was, but what it ultimately led me to. And it led me to this point in life. Who knows? I might not have been recording had I continued to stay in restaurant business, and I could be on a totally different trajectory. But at the end of the day, I'm happy and proud to be where I'm at. And I just want to share that with other people. And, maybe there's some lessons to be learned through the journey that I've gone through. And the big idea with this is to be able to have other people on that aren't my story. But in order for me to feel comfortable doing that, I want to make sure that my audience knows who they're listening to and who, they're supporting. And so I'm here to support you if you are here to support me. And even if you aren't here to support me, I still will support you. So I love you guys. Ooh. Okay, so I was just rereading my notes because I kind of had touched on like the main things. I wanted to share my shoulder story with me, my extreme negative, but how I was able to find good out of that and recognize that, take that reflection to recognize some of the things that maybe happened to you in the past and what you could do to look at it in a different light and look for that good, because when you really start to look for the good, you will find it. And it goes the same way with the bad. So try your best not to look for that bad, but when it does pop up, just recognize, hey, this is the balance of life, and it's going to balance itself out, and I just have to wait it out and give it that time and give it that ability to complete its cycle and what it's supposed to do. And just enjoy being here. And it was something that took a lot of oomph to get me to enjoy life and what it really meant, because I felt like I was just moving through the punches. And yes, I was moving forward, but I wasn't growing forward. It was just, life's going to keep going on whether you're here or not. And why not make an impact? Why not try to find your purpose or help other people find theirs and find comfort in the fact that there's so many people on this planet. Like, you can find someone to be able to talk to, and especially with the influx of social media now and the ease to be able to listen to podcasts or give good things to your brain. Like, how there's that phrase, you are what you eat. Well, it goes the same for your brain. You are what you put into it. And so just remind yourself, weighing the good and the bad, that this is life. And sometimes I find myself wanting this ideal life and knowing how I want to live and how I want to achieve these things. But then I look at the reality of what I'm living in, and it's not that. And so, not to succumb and fall victim to, oh, woe is me, I'm in this reality that I'm not enjoying. It's like, no, I know what I want from my life and I know what I want to achieve. And when you really start telling yourself, I've already achieved these things, even though you haven't yet, you subconsciously start to program yourself to do those actions that get you to that point. And for me, it was having a little bit of courage and confidence to say, okay, I'm going to record a video and see where it goes. And I've definitely had a lot of issues in trying to do this, and understand that this is not an easy thing when it comes to social media and stuff. People that, have the fame and have done it successfully or have gotten lucky with it, they're all different stories. But at the end of the day, there's always going to be someone else that probably does it the same way or close to it. And yeah, that's kind of just life. But, oh, I am going to close that episode too now, but I do have another homework lesson for you. And that is to reflect on this question. What can you do today to make tomorrow a little better? And as always, thank you for tuning in. And if you want to see more from our channel, make sure to hit that subscribe button here. Hopefully I'm tech savvy enough where it's loaded up here, but if it's not, then jazz hands. But, I just want to thank you guys for listening in on this and being a support system. And I just want to thank myself for being courageous enough to get out and do this. Even though I've definitely had some moments where I stutter or I say for instead of for, but my iPad just died, so I have no idea what the last line I wanted to say was because I was kind of just rambling. But I just want to thank you guys again. I hope that you have a beautiful day. Remember, what can you do today to make your life a little bit better tomorrow? And I love you guys. Make sure you subscribe, like, comment, whatever you want to do. If you want to share some things with me, I would love to hear it and be able to talk about it in future episodes. But again, just really grateful for this opportunity and for the courage to be able to discuss the good versus the bad in our lives and how it's okay to have them, because we live extraordinary, unique, ordinary lives. So love you guys. Toodles. And hold on, maybe I'll make it better for the camera. Oh, I could do this all seductively for the camera. Okay, that was weird. I'm gonna go now.
Charlie girl, we finished episode 2. We finished episode 2. Yeah, we did. Bye.